Now we've got using attachments in Flow. Okay. Number one thing, I love talking about Flow all the time. So feel free to. That QR code is my LinkedIn. I think I already am connected with a lot of y'all on LinkedIn. If I'm not, just take a second and add me, because yeah, I'm always free to answer any Flow questions. Sometimes I'll respond more quickly than others, but this stuff is fun for me. Second, we're going to sort of talk about what we're doing today. All right. We're going to be able to identify the objects associated to a file or content document, right? We want to be able to understand what all these weird things are that are in a content document, an attachment, whatever you like to call it. Second, we're going to use content document links, one of those objects, to associate a file with a case and its parent account. So we're going to take an attachment and make it show up both on the case record and the parent account record as well. And then finally, we're going to use formulas and version IDs, which we'll learn about, to display a preview image of file on a case. All right. Now let me show you how it works. So I'm going to switch over to the completed flow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to here. I'm going to fire off the flow, close that down. And I'm going to show you what this thing looks like in action. So it's a very simple two-screen flow with a lot of stuff in the background. So the first one, we're going to select the account that we want to associate with. So I'm going to click on United Oil and Gas. I'm going to click on that, and we see there are two open cases from it. So I'm going to select the design issue with the mechanical rotor. And like I said, this is why you want to use a new Trailhead or Trailblazer organization. So that way you have some cases already in there. I'm going to hit upload files. I'm just going to pick a random file. Let's do this QR code I just made earlier. And I'm going to check the photograph option. Now that I do that, we're going to see that the flow processed successfully. Now let's see what happens. I'm going to go back to my cases. And I'm going to click on the design issue with the mechanical rotor. And we're going to see a couple of things going on right now. First, that image, like we said, the one I just uploaded, we see a nice little appropriate size preview image right there. We're going to see when we go down to related lists, we're going to see the QR code is right there. And when we go to the parent object, we're going to see that as we scroll down, that's already attached to the parent object. And I thought that was a nice thing, because every once in a while a case gets deleted, but you still need, or it gets closed or something like that, but you still want the attachment associated with the case. And so that way you're not going to lose that. Now, let me show you how this happens. And probably all of us who have been around a while have been in the ecosystem since 2016. And so many of us remembered when there was the turnover from attachments to files. Those used to kind of be two separate things. And it moved into this bigger thing called content documents. That's what they call it behind the screen. You see a little preview right here in the details, and it's just like any other Salesforce object, but there's also these related lists. This first one is called a content document link. And this is a really weird S object. Normally the owner field and the shares are separate, right? But this kind of combines them all into one. And so you can see it's linked to a case, it's linked to an account, and it's linked to me, the owner, right? The other thing we see down here is the version. And what the version is the version is the literal file. And so you can replace and update multiple versions. Well, when I directly click on that version link, it's going to download the file. And so this is where the file itself is. So if I want to manipulate how this works, I need to get my content document, which is this main object. Then I got to play around with these links right here. And then I've got to play around with the version where the file lives. And so there's a lot of stuff all collapsed into this one little object. And I want you to create 2 custom fields on the case object, right? The first one is going to be an image URL field. And literally that's just going to be text. So you're going to name something called image URL field and make it just a straight up text field. The second thing you're going to need to do is make a formula field, and your formula field is going to have the following values: image with the underscore right there, and then uploaded picture right over there as the other values for your formula field. I named mine image for case, and that is where the image itself is going to be displayed. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to begin by building this flow. And the basic idea is there's going to be 3 screens. You saw it already. There's the attachment screen. We're going to get the open cases because we got to populate that data table. And then finally, we're going to have the upload field. Now, could I get someone, I'm going to stop sharing, and could I get someone to share their screen and I'm going to walk them through the process? Okay, so we're going to begin. So Uma, could you begin by creating the flow?
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, from here, awesome. Sweet. It's already set on ScreenFlow, so we're good to go right there. And you can just hit create, and we'll move on to the next step. Now, for our first step, what I want you to do is I want you to click right below where it says start, and let's add a screen. And on this first screen, what we're going to do is we're going to add a lookup. So this could be a straight up lookup, nothing fancy. Now, one thing to note, and I'll just take a second to talk through some of the stuff on the lookups themselves. We want to make sure we understand what all the little fields on this mean. So we're going to give it an API name, which is just going to be the name of that lookup, and we're going to call it find account. What you do whenever you're making a lookup is you're always going to point at some object or another. So I'm actually going to have you, even though we could totally do it this way, I want people to get the logic a little bit. So if you could click down where it says object API name, just a couple of fields below that.
Oh.
Yeah. Do me a favor and just type in case. And the thing about this is you're literally going to be typing in the name of a Salesforce object. It could be a custom object. It could be a standard object like cases. But what you're going to do is, so right there where it says field API name, type in account ID, and it's all going to be one word, and the A and the I are capitalized. And then we'll just add a label like find the account. And so now what we're going to do really quick is we're going to hit done. Ooh, what's our error? Let's click on the
Valid screen.
invalid screen. Yeah, we got to name our screen. So let's click on that real quick. Yeah. And so we can just call this like uploader or something like that. Now our next step is we're going to do a get records element. And that's going to let you add it a little more easily. Yeah. Especially if you're used to the older interface, a lot of times the dragging stuff over would be the best way to do it. But right now, really the bubbles are where it's at. And we're going to click on get records. Boom. Now, as we saw in the presentation earlier, we were dealing with cases, right? And so what we want to do is we want to get cases. And so we can give this whatever name we want, just get open cases or something like that is a perfectly fine name. And so we want to add a couple of conditions. First, we want to add the conditions. We're going to click right on field. And let's look for the select account ID. And from the group, let's click right there, if you wouldn't mind, Duma. On the value, I'm sorry. And so anybody in the group, what do you think we would want to pick as the account ID?
The case from get open cases and then pick the account ID from there.
I think from the screen variable.
Oh, sorry, from the
This-
screen. Yes, you're
I
right.
just look up.
Awesome. Yep. 100%. You got it. Now we want to add a couple more conditions just to make sure we're getting the open ones, right? So let's add a status or stage. I'm trying to recall if there's statuses or stages on cases.
Status.
Awesome. And let's go to not equal to. And let's it not equal to closed. And then also add one more condition. Is not, oh, sorry, yep, status again. And let's do is null. And we're going to pick false. Now, is there anything else we might want to do on this screen?
Choose all records
Why would we choose all records?
because you want more than one.
100%. All right, and now we can get that next screen. So let's add that very next screen. And what we're going to do here first is we're going to start by adding a data table. And so let's give it a name. Guess we can call it open cases since it's open cases. Awesome, we're in business. And so what do you think we're going to get from here? Let's click on the data source and then let's have somebody from the group tell me what we want to use.
Cases from get cases.
Absolutely. Now that we've got that, let's add some columns. To do that, we're just going to click on configure columns. When I did mine, I did date and subject. Great. And let's add one more column. We're going to add, let's say, the subject. So now, do we see that file upload element over there on the left?
Mhm.
We're going to click and drag that right below the case uploader. What we're going to do, and this is a pretty, I will say, this is just full disclosure, kind of a tough element. There's a lot of, if you can see on the right-hand side, all the configuration options, there's a lot of just stuff. You know, there's a lot of stuff and a lot of choices, and a lot of it really matters. So if this seems confusing, it is. Just wanna, but we want to try to go through this a little slowly and a little carefully. And let's just give it a name like upload attachment if we haven't used that already. Now we can see a bunch of things. You can do accepted formats, you can do content document IDs, content version IDs. We're going to skip that for now, but one thing we're going to do is see where it says allow multiple files. We're going to make that false. And that's basically because if we want the picture uploader part to work easily and not have to use any Apex, and not have to use a bunch of conditions on like the file type and things like that, restricting people to just one file will make the whole designate whether it's a photograph or not part work a lot easier. The other thing we're going to want to do is we're going to pick a related record ID. And which record do we think we are going to want to use?
Is it the selected case?
You would think that. You would think that. This was, I admit it was slightly a trick question. I was banging my head against the wall for that. But unfortunately, it's not going to be that. It is going to be, we're going to have to use the account that we picked earlier. This field, for whatever reason, doesn't accept certain dynamic components. I've got some theories about why it doesn't do selected case, but a lot of the things like record collection lookups, record collection lookup values, things like that, it won't accept. It's just a thing. And so given that we can't do the selected case, what do we think we're going to do instead?
Get the account ID from screen.
100%. 100%.
And then the record ID, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Hundo.
Yeah.
Hundo, you got it. Do not feel bad if you do one of these things and it doesn't work the first time with the record you're working on, because it's not the most intuitive. All right, I think we've got everybody. So let's give this screen a name. We may have to click at the very top again.
Dirk, I have a question on the data table.
Absolutely.
If we go to configure rows on the data table, do we want this to be a multiple selection?
We don't, just because we're uploading. I mean, we could, I guess, but
I mean,
we're,
because it defaults to multiple.
because it, you know, ultimately we're only going to be doing it to one case anyway.
Right.
The weird thing is the single multiple doesn't matter. That it
Okay,
matters, but it
okay.
doesn't matter is it stores them as a collection, even if you pick only one.
Okay.
which is gonna be a little bit of a theme of this too. But yeah,
Okay.
if you do configure rows real quick. Yep, we're gonna do single. You could do that, and that'll also be great.
Okay, gotcha.
Either way, it should work just fine. We're gonna need to create a loop. And so here's my first question. Why are we making loops?
To process each record in the case.
Absolutely, to process each record. But we're just uploading one file, right?
Mhm.
So why do we need to use a loop?
There's a comment in chat.
Oh, okay, okay, let's see what they said. For the content links, absolutely, the content document links are saved as a text record collection. Even if you have only one,
Okay.
it saves it as a collection. Even if you're just dealing with one, you gotta use a loop. And that's an odd thing about this. And I admit, when I was learning to use content document links, that was that tricked me for, I'd say, about a day or two. Yeah, so we're gonna create our first loop. We can just call it loop through document links, maybe. This is where things are gonna get a little weird. We're gonna go down to, you got it? And you see we have the 3 record collections right there. It immediately creates 3.
So which one do we want?
We're gonna start with the content document ID,
Okay, at the beginning.
because that's gonna be the ID of the parent record. We're actually gonna be making the links, I should add.
And that's it for that.
Our next step is going to be to create a record variable, because we're gonna need to take a lot of the values that we have gotten in this flow so far, and we're gonna pass that to a content document link record variable.
All right, well, we can go over here and create our variable. So we can go into a new resource here on the manager. And then we're creating a variable. So we're going to select variable. And then are we just going to call this record ID? What do you want to call it?
Let's call it like content document link holder or something like that.
Like that?
Yeah.
And then we will go back in here to, it's a text, right? Is it text or?
In this case, it's gonna be a record.
Oh, that's right. It's a record ID. I was just talking about that. Yeah. Okay. And then it will be on the, will it be on the case or will it be on the account?
It's gonna be a content document link. It's a
Oh,
separate
see, I don't
object.
even know what I'm doing. This is great. This one,
Yeah,
content document link is our object. Okay.
yeah. And this is what I like to call a weird S object. Salesforce has a bunch of objects that aren't listed in the object manager.
Mhm, mhm.
And so your shares, your members of a task, like people who are assigned to a task, there's like secret objects that do all that work. And so in this case, we're just going to make one of those objects.
I want to show the other way as well.
And we're going to be making an assignment anyway.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, make an assignment and then do it.
Okay. Okay. So here is going to be our assignment. We'll close that. Close that. And here's our assignment. Do that. And then we're going to call it, what are we going to call it?
Assign share, I think was, or assign link is probably better. Yeah.
Okay. And then this is where we can create the new variable. So we're going to go back in here. So this is the same as this, only it's just right here. We're doing a variable. And so this is our record. We
Yeah.
know that. And then we're going to search for this content document link. Yeah. All right. Do we need to do input or output?
In this case, no. No,
Okay.
in this case, no, because we're not really getting anything from outside of the flow.
Okay. And we're not allowing multiple values.
Absolutely. Because yeah, we just want to create a single content
Right.
document.
Okay. So we're going to do this.
So what we're going to do is we're actually going to click right on that content document link holder. And then we're going to,
Oh, you mean here?
yeah, oh no, you're completely right, on the variable. And we're actually going to add it's going to be a field on the content document.
Oh, okay.
You got it.
There. Okay.
And do the content document ID. And that's just going to be the parent record, whatever the actual content document itself is, right?
Okay. Okay.
And now next, right below that,
Yeah, what is that equals? What is the value there?
Equals, oh, you're right. And then we're gonna do, well, what do we think we're gonna do? Let's ask the crowd.
Is it from the upload attachment and then the ID? Record ID?
That would be a great idea. The problem is because we're in a loop, that would give us every record ID in the collection. And you can't assign a collection to a single variable.
Oh, right. Okay, so is it the current loop?
100%. And that's in fact why we went into the loop, because it's a collection, right? It contains a bunch, in theory, it could contain a bunch of content document IDs. So we want to say, give me just this one. And then there's going to be one more thing we're going to do. We're going to add one more row.
So there were 3 of those. Are we gonna add another one of those that we did up here?
Yes, we will. Well, actually, yeah, because we're going to handle them. And that's actually why if you probably saw a little earlier, there were 2 loops. And one is going to deal with the content document ID, and the other one's going to deal with the version ID.
Is it this? It's right
Absolutely.
here? It's that, and then it's content document link ID.
In
Is it
this,
that?
we're going to do the linked entity ID.
Okay, okay,
Yeah, the content document link ID,
That's
that's just
fine.
the record ID of the link.
okay, okay.
Each link, just like a contact or an account, also has a record ID. And so that's just the record ID.
Okay.
And believe me, I've gotten that one wrong a lot. A lot.
We're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna loop, right? We're gonna go into our loop.
In this case, no, we're actually going to finally use that case we selected.
So open cases,
You got it?
first selected row, and then are we gonna dig into the account ID?
I'll ask the group. Are we going to dig into the account ID?
I think it's case ID.
Absolutely.
Sorry, just a
There
quick
it
question.
is.
What
There
is
it
the difference between the 2 variables that we have here on the left?
Sure. I'm going to share my screen for just 1 second. Basically, this is the content document, right?
Okay.
And this is our version,
Mhm.
and this is the linked entity ID. And the ID of this thing would be the content document link ID. That's the sort of the page itself, right? And that's your linked entity. And we're using someone on the as we were talking was mentioning why we didn't dig into the account and we did the case. And that's because we already assigned the account up here, if you recall. So we dealt with the account right here. They've gotten their link. But now we got to give a link to the case as well.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay.
Y'all, I realize we skipped a step. It's cool. This is like the quickest step. All right. We're going to go back to the screen real quick. And everybody add a quick checkbox that just says photograph. It's not going to be anything fancy. You're just literally going to drag checkbox over to here. And then just write in photograph as the name. Now we're going to add a decision element. And I think I called this like boxes checked or something like that.
Box is checked. Okay. Is checked. Do you change it from default? Because I'd like to change it. I don't like it to say default.
I should do that. I think you may inspire good behavior on my part.
I usually do descriptions for everything too. I'm kind of rushing through it. And that's not best practices.
Understand?
So,
I would encourage the same thing.
so all conditions are met, and we're gonna say is checked equals true. Or do you want to say is not checked?
Yeah, we can just do global constant true. Yep, and we are, yes, absolutely,
Okay.
Michelle. We are checking to see if the photograph checkbox is checked. We want to not do the photo preview if it turns out we're not uploading a photo, right? And so we want to basically have the user indicate when a photo is being uploaded. So once we've got is checked over there, we got to add another loop.
Loopception.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what we've done is we're on the is check. They've checked that they have a photograph. So now for each of these, we're going to,
Oh, hold on. Actually, I think Michelle made a great call. So we did the wrong thing. So click on boxes checked over there.
Mhm.
You can, and then see where it says is checked. We were
Yep.
accidentally checking the decision itself. So we need to
Oh.
pick the photograph element. Great call, Michelle. We'll fix that in post.
Photograph equals true.
Absolutely.
Yes, good job. Okay, so if we have that, I'm gonna close this. Go back in here, edit element, okay.
Yep. And from here,
What are we calling our loop?
let's call it, I don't know, loop through versions.
Wow. And now we need our collection variable,
Absolutely.
and it is so it's not that,
You're right.
it's the contact version IDs, content version IDs.
Absolutely. Because, and for those of you who joined us a little late, the version is the actual file.
Right.
The content document's just the junction object that holds everything, but the version is the real deal file. Now that we've got that, let's go to there. In this case, we're going to create an assignment.
Assignment, yes.
And first, let's call it like assign to link or something like that. Oh, sorry,
and-
assign to version because it's a version. And we're going to add a new resource.
Okay.
It's going to be a straight up text variable.
Yeah, okay.
It's going to be called version ID holder.
And that's that.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to hit done.
Okay.
And so our goal now is we're actually going to, we want to remember those fields we made right at the start of the presentation? We want to add the URL value and assign it to those fields.
Okay.
So, but before we do that, we are going to need to do just a little bit of assignment. Real quick, what are we going to assign to version ID holder? Anybody got any ideas on the call?
Is it one of the current loops?
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay, there we go. Loop through versions.
Absolutely.
Okay, got it. All right. And that's it. It doesn't need anything else with it.
Absolutely, because
Okay.
now we've given that thing a value.
Okay.
Now, real quick, we're going to make a formula and I'm going to share my screen. So we're going to make a text formula called version URL. And so the way that Salesforce stores these things is it's going to be /fsc servlet.shepherd. I'm going to paste that in there. But the important thing is you're going to need to copy the whole URL of your sandbox. And I don't know what that is, or your, not sandbox, your Trailhead, Trailblazer org. org. And then after that, you're going to do the standard, and you're going to take your standard URL after the slash and paste it right there. And so I'm going to show you what it looks like on my screen, but that's the idea. You got to copy this first and then that. I'm going to go over to mine. And so I took the URL of my Trailblazer org thing. And then I put front slash and these things after it. You're going to put single quotes around it and then do plus, which just combines the text together. And it'll be, and you're going to add version ID holder or whatever you called that variable. And I will say that's super non-intuitive. Like I had to do a lot of like power Googling to figure out what the URL for the content document versions were. And then once I figured out what the URL for the content document versions were, then you can kind of work backwards. But yeah, it's the least intuitive thing. We're going to do update case. And the conditions for it, it's the object, and the conditions are going to be ID equals that. And you may notice if you don't see these fields, you need to select specify conditions to identify records and set fields individually.
What is that variable you said? Value case table dot first.
It may change slightly. I called my version of this, my data table case table.
Okay.
But whatever you call it, it's just going to be the first selected row on your data table, whatever you happen to call it.
Okay, first selected row. Okay, I got it.
We assigned a bunch of values to this link up there, right? I named it shareholder because I thought that was funny. And so we're going to scroll down here. And you're going to pick whatever you named your value over there. I think a lot of people did something like link holder. And you're just going to create records from that. So everybody save and let's debug. And I'm going to go here and I'm going to pick United Oil and Gas Corp. And I do that one just so you know, because that will have a couple of cases associated with it.
Okay.
Most of it, for whatever reason, Trailhead only comes with 3 accounts. So like if you picked, I don't know, Tableau or whatever, that's one of the standard ones and it's empty.
Okay.
So definitely do United Oil and Gas Corp because it'll
Okay.
have 2 open cases. And I'll pick one of these values. I'm going to upload a file and I'm going to take that screenshot I just took of this very meeting. Hit select. We're going to pick photograph because it certainly is. And once we've done that, we're going to hit next. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody. So I think we're at the juncture, but yeah, if you did it successfully, as you said, you can go to your you can go to that case and you should be able to click right on there and see all the things on the record itself.